Hi students, welcome back for the second part of properties of logarithms. In this section, we're going to learn how to condense and expand logarithms. So let's start with the product property. The product property says when you have, for instance, log some base number of x times y, you can separate into two separate logarithms having the same base if you add together. So I always think of multiplying and adding, multiplying and adding. It's like you tilt the symbol. It's like you tilt the multiply sign and you remember adding. So if you have log base b of xy, you can separate it into log base b of x plus log base b of y. Now, conversely, the opposite of that would be if you were adding two separate logarithms together, if you're adding two separate logarithms and you want to condense it and make it into one logarithm instead of two logarithms, then you condense it with the same base, so log base b of x times y. So just remember adding and multiplying. Adding and multiplying are associated. So if adding and multiplying are associated, then what do you think dividing would be? Dividing and subtracting are associated with each other. So if I had log base b of x divided by y, and I wanted to expand it and separate it into two separate logarithms, both base b, I would have log base b of x minus log base b of y. And the one that you subtract is the one that is in the denominator. So the denominator is the one subtracted. All right, if I had, conversely, opposite of that, if I had two separate logarithms and I'm subtracting, and I want to condense them into one single logarithm with the same base, I condense by dividing. So I would have log base b of x divided by log base b of y. So the one that you're subtracting is the one that goes in the denominator. So I always remember dividing and subtracting. One third and last rule for logarithms, then we'll practice a couple. The last rule is called the power rule. The power rule says if you have a log, like log base b of x to the p power, it is permissible to move the p in front of the word log. So you're allowed to move your power in front of the word log. That's expanding because you're making it longer, you're elongating it. And vice versa, if you want to condense, if you were given p log base b of x and you want to condense, then you have to put the p back up over top of the x, and that's condensing. All right, let's take a look. Our first example should say expand. Our first couple examples. I'm going to expand log base 9 of 6 times x cubed times y to the 5th times z. I circled every time I said times, I circled, I'm going to have to write log base 9 4 times. See how I have 4 circles? Because I'm multiplying all 4 of those together. So we'll start log base 9 of 6, multiplying and adding. So add log base 9 of x cubed plus, because you're multiplying, log base 9 of y to the 5th power. And one more, we're still multiplying, so plus log base 9 of z. Now we're not completely expanded yet. The power rule comes into play. Because we have powers, we can move those powers in front of the word log, and I'm just going to erase it just to save us a little time. I'm just going to move the 5 and I'll put the 5 in front of the word log. There we go. That's completely expanded. And here's one more example of expanding. I'm going to have to write log base 3, 1, 2, 3 times. But before I do it, I'm going to rewrite the denominator. So I have log base 3 of p squared q divided by 3q minus 1. And I'm going to use the rule that we learned yesterday, the one that says you put your exponent divided by your root. So that would be to the 1/5 power. Okay, now let's expand. When I expand, I'll have to write log base 3 times. So we start log base 3 of p squared plus, because we're multiplying right here, we are multiplying right here in between the two, p squared and q. So we have log base 3 of q. Now we're dividing, divided by, so dividing is subtracting, log base 3 of 3q minus 1 in parentheses to the 1/5 power. We're not completely expanded yet. One more small step. We're going to move the 2 in front of the word log, and we're going to move the 1/5 in front of the word log. So our final answer, it completely expanded, is 2 log base 3 of p plus log base 3 of q plus 1/5 log base 3 of 3q minus 1, and done. Okay, moving on to the next. Now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to condense. All right, the first thing I want to do is start by moving my 2 back up over top as a power. And now I'm going to write log base 8 one time only. I can see I'm subtracting, so I know I'll be dividing. The 9x squared in parentheses, 9x squared in the numerator, and the 2x minus 5 in the denominator because you're subtracting. Anything that's subtracting falls to the denominator. Anything that's multiplying goes to the numerator. So if I were subtracting again, like say I was subtracting log base 8 of r, the r would go in the bottom and be multiplied times the 2x minus 5. Anything that is being subtracted drops down to the bottom. Now, one thing we could do is 9x squared. We could work that out. That would be 9x times 9x, which is 81x squared over 2x minus 5. And I'm going to leave that r out. That wasn't in the original problem. Okay, one more. We'll start by moving the 1/2 back into its exponent position. So it's no longer out in front. And we'll, the 3 as well. We'll move the 3 back over top of the x, so it's no longer in the front. We'll write log base 5 one time. We're condensing. I know I'm going to be subtracting because of that minus sign. So the minus sign is dividing. The x cubed goes to the top, and the 6 minus x to the 1/2 power goes to the bottom. And that would be it. So we could rationalize that, but I think that's probably okay. Well, just in case, let's go ahead and rationalize. Let's multiply by 6 minus x to the 1/2 over 6 minus x to the 1/2 power, because that is a square root, So all I'm doing is multiplying it by a square root. So I would end up with log base 5 of x cubed times 6 minus x to the 1/2 power over 6 minus x, just like that. Because this is a square root times a square root, and the square roots cancel each other out. All right, have a great day.